Hi, everybody. Welcome back to SEO in the Details. I'm Fred Shramovich. I've been an SEO professional for the last 14 years. And I wanted to, this week, take a look at basic optimizations you can do for any website, whether you're a service-based business, maybe you sell products, maybe you're a distributor, it doesn't really matter. These are all fundamental basic optimizations you can do for your business to help you grow in organic search in Google. Again, I focus on Google because it's the largest search engine to worry about. And a lot of these things are basic, but they're crucial to making sure that you're going to get visibility to your website. SEO is not a set and forget type of thing. It is a constant process that you regularly need to monitor and understand the things that you're changing, understand the impact on your rankings and your traffic. And if you don't know your data, you don't know if things are working or not. So make sure that you understand the direction your business is going in based on data, not just your opinion or thoughts on things. The basics today that we'll target are page titles, or SEO titles they might be called, or meta titles, meta descriptions, your URL structure, headings and titles, on the actual pages themselves, like what those are and what they mean, images, and navigation and links. So how you can get around your website. Those are all important factors for every website that's out there, whether you're a service-based company or you're selling something. Page titles are probably the most important factor for ranking on Google. It basically is in your code of your website, and it identifies to the search engines what your page is about. The thing to remember is you only have 70 or so characters to work from in that space. So you really need to optimize what you're putting in there. Otherwise, you're not going to get the message across that you need to for humans or for the search engines. Where it does show up for people to see is in your search results that might show up in Google, Bing, Yahoo, etc. It is the big bolded section of information here that you'll see kind of in a blue, purpley color. Otherwise, most people don't even notice this type of text. And it also lives in your tabs of your browser when you're surfing the internet. You might see that on your desktop mostly. But it is a set of code that Google reads pretty quickly when they're scanning all the pages of your website. And each one for your site needs to be unique. So every URL should have a unique page title or SEO title or meta title, whatever you want to call it. And by following best practices of length, you'll be in a lot better shape than a lot of competitors out there. And I have three different sections here. So the top one is if your listing is more than 70 characters and it's too long, Google, Bing, Yahoo, etc. can't display it properly. You'll see that they add a bunch of red dots that you can see here in the red box. I mean, they add a bunch of dots there. So that basically means that it's so long Google can't display it properly. And it almost looks like an incomplete message. And I'm not trying to pick on this detail company that's actually in my area. Just something that happens to every website. And you really need to dial that in. The second thing that I would say is important is you want your sequencing to be non-brand information. So something that isn't your company name or the products that you sell, you want the branded terms to be at the end. And then you want the non-brand things like ceramic coatings or detailing or spray sealant or whatever it might be. You want those at the front. So this is backwards. And also I have highlighted here, don't do this. So in your page titles, don't put near me. You might want to put near a city's name, but don't put near me. That's not a good tactic. I know people search by near me, but from a physical and technical standpoint on your website, don't put near me in there. It looks goofy and it doesn't really work. And then below here is an unoptimized title. So having very short terms or phrases that don't make sense or don't really mean anything, like this has home. So it's on the home page of this website, but like Google already knows that's your homepage, so you don't need to put that on there, and you don't want people to just see home because that doesn't make any sense to them. Instead, they should just have triple threat detailing Homer Glen, Illinois. They should remove home there. And those are just things that, without knowing the basics and fundamentals of this stuff, you might not know to do. So again, I'm not knocking any of these brands doing this, but these are basic best practices that you can follow no matter what your business is. And if you do not put anything in there, sometimes your platform that you're using will force information in there, and it might not be what your ideal information would be. And you want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward by doing that type of work. The second most important thing I think to address, and it's not technically a ranking factor, but it lives right below your page titles in the search results, and that's called a meta description. So it's basically your area to put information about your brand, your product, your services, maybe a call to action. Again, this lives in code of the website. It doesn't really live anywhere on the page. And you have roughly 160 characters to work with. So a little bit more than a Twitter post, but still not very much. And the same thing happens if it's too long. Google put ellipses here that says it's too long. We can't display the whole thing. So by tightening that up a little bit, you can put a clear message there of what the page is about, or maybe what your service is, what your offer is, and really give the viewer something to chew on a little bit. And that might separate you from your competitors, no matter what the business type is or service that you're in. And then below that, you'll see I have a whole red box here. And this one is because they do not have a formal meta description tagged in the code. So Google is forcing information here. And for most people, this isn't going to make any sense. It's just kind of a bunch of the code that Google can read, and they're shoving it in here. So it's kind of random information. And again, you want to give them your best foot forward. So every page should have a unique and created meta description. Otherwise, again, this could be just gibberish that isn't helping anyone. And one of the other big things that I see lots of mistakes on is the URL structure folks use on their websites. And URLs are created as a web address. We all know that. They're crucial for humans, for web browsers and search engines and all these different things. And they need to make sense. So you really want them to follow some best practices of URL should be definitive and concise. So use words that make sense to people as well as search engines. Try not to just use numbers and random letters because, again, that's not helping anyone. When you do have words and you're separating them, use hyphens to separate the words. Don't use random symbols or anything like that because Google really doesn't understand what those are for. So hyphens are probably the best practice to use on that. Maybe an underscore, but again, best practice would be use a hyphen or a dash, whatever you want to call it. And then use lowercase letters for all your URLs. You don't want to use uppercase because the format looks goofy. Search engines don't care about that too much, but it just keeps it concise and consistent across the website. Avoid using URL parameters for hard-coded pages. You can track and do things differently using parameters, but you never want to use a parameter to hard code a page on your site. Most people don't ever have to worry about that, but I just wanted to call it out because I have seen it in my many years of doing this. So, use good URL structure. So if you do ceramic coatings, maybe it's ceramic-coatings-in-Chicago if you're doing coatings in Chicago. Or maybe you sell ceramic coatings as a product. So you could do ceramic coatings as your URL structure, but lowercase, put a hyphen between ceramic and coatings. Or maybe you sell spray detailers. So again, spray dash detailers. You don't want to jumble them up together and make like a long run-on word or sentence, but, kind of type it out as you would read it. And that should take you quite a bit along the way. And then lining all these things up, so your page title, the language in your meta description and URLs are all related to each other, and that helps both humans understand what these pages are about, and it really helps the search engines kind of know what they're looking at and builds relevancy to those pages. So consistency across these different variables is super important. Just a quick tip is I like to sometimes use tools to help me with the length of a page title or a meta description or a URL. And there's simulators out there. I don't really need these in my day-to-day work just because I know the best practices very well. But I like to use wordcounter.net for looking at lengths of things. But this one's really neat. It's called the SERP simulator. And you can type in a URL, a title, and a meta description. It'll actually show you how that will look in Google search results. It's a great way just to make sure that you're meeting best practices and your site's going to look good in the search results, and you can spot check any typos or any other issues. So it's something I recommend doing. And I always recommend tracking what information you're using on your website. So whether you create a Google Sheet or Excel file, you put a list of what URLs you have, what the page title, meta description, and other information is. You have something to fall back on when you're testing maybe something new, or maybe your site breaks or something happens and you need to back something up. You have a list of that information and you can quickly go back in and add it. So you're not having to do research again or reinvent the wheel, if you will. Headings are something that's super important. So heading tags are a simple form of HTML that highlights important information. It could be the title of a page or an article. It could be used to break up sections of information, and it helps users understand like something that might be important to them. Maybe it's, why get a ceramic coating, and they can hop to that section, or maybe how long does the ceramic coating last, and they can browse through the different chunks of content because they know what they're looking for. So it helps with user experience. It's easier to format information and content that way by using these. And they're based on styling for every website. So they might look different across different websites, but they are in a chronological order. So there's H1s, which are bigger than an H2, which are bigger than an H3, which are bigger than an H4. And they're mostly sized differently. But the weight from like a Google standpoint, H1s have the most value, H2s are second, etc. You don't want to beat them to death. You don't want to have every line of content wrapped in a heading because that's super confusing for the search engines, and it might format the look of it really funky for your users. So try not to do that. Here's some examples of using tags, but they're not optimized. So they have an H1 here, an H2, passionately automotive, but that's not optimized. That's just kind of a vague statement. While if you look at this other one, they have ceramic coatings, St. Charles, Illinois. So that one's optimized and it's using the proper format of the heading there. And you can see that this other site here that's not optimized, they're repeating a bunch of these tags on things that, again, don't make sense. Like our services, they have tagged multiple times here. So Google is going to be like, I guess our services is the important part of information on this site, even though it doesn't know what services those are. So to optimize that, you might put our detailing services or our ceramic coating services, whatever it might be, to really dial that in. And this site just isn't doing that. So play around with different heading types or learn how to change the style of your headings and make it look good on your site as well, because you want to make sure that it's attractive and not too bulky or taking up too much space. And that also goes a long way with readability and UX of your site. Images are super important for your authority, like as a detailer or maybe a brand. They're good for relevancy because they can tie an image in someone's mind to a service or a product. They build trust. So people are like, well, how does that build trust? Well, if they see you as a detailer in pictures detailing a car, a boat, an RV, whatever it might be, they see you actually doing the work. So that's super important. And my buddy Chris at Detailer's Roadmap has talked about that quite a bit. Just having stock almost imagery is not going to give you the relevancy or authority of being an expert in something. So, having you or your team in those images, or you using a product as a brand, really builds credibility to what you're doing. And images are also important because they are able to be optimized. So you want to make sure that every image is using a name, and preferably in a PNG file or a JPEG. And then when you name the image, you don't want to just use some random IMG 1620 like an iPhone would spit out. You want to rename that when you save it to your website or even to your computer, like ceramic coating 2017 white Toyota Camry. It's a very specific thing that you just name that file. And that way, you can filter and find it quicker when you're doing your website work, or maybe you're trying to send something to a client that they have the same vehicle. You're not having to dig through a massive list of images. You actually have it named, but also has relevancy for SEO. So if someone does a Google search, you can show up in image searches as well as a normal organic result. So having that file name is super crucial. The next way to tag an image, it's something called an alt tag, and you're basically describing the image to search engines and people. And that's super important for SEO, but it's also important to cover your butt from an ADA perspective. And the ADA is the American Disabilities Act. They actually have laws in place that you need to tag your images correctly. Actually, you can open yourself up to lawsuits if you don't do that, because they want everyone on the web to be able to understand what an image is, that even if they don't see, maybe they use a screen reader. So their screen reader will crawl the images and say, this one has an alt tag and it's describing this image as a detailer in Orlando ceramic coating a Porsche, whatever it says. That sends a message to the person through their screen reader, and they can understand what that image is about, even though they can't see it. Again, that also is super helpful for SEO, but you can actually get sued by people and fined by the ADA by not having those tags. So it also covers your butt from a legal perspective. So make sure all your images have alt tags attributed to them. I use landscape images because they work well on desktop and mobile devices. It's just a good format. The long up and down vertical, more old school photos on a phone aren't as ideal. So I prefer wide lens, type approaches to images. And then always use unique images for your services, your products, your brand, and even yourself, including yourself in those images. Always use as many versions of those as you can. You can even have the same image, but maybe you rename it something different because you're identifying something separately in that image, and it's not the same thing as maybe something else you called out, because maybe you detail the Porsche and you have a polisher on in your hands. Well, maybe you talk about polishing on one image and the other one is just general detailing that you're talking about. So you can use multiple images for the same website, just name them differently and use different alt tags if you need to. So images are super important. And then you can also use those in your Google My Business account or on Facebook, social media, etc. So images are super important nowadays. Navigation and links. So being able to find information is a super important thing for human beings and search engines. If they can't find a page on your site, it doesn't help them. And if Google and Bing and Yahoo cannot find a page easily on your website, they're not going to give you as much credit for it. They consider those like kind of trick pages, or like kind of fake. You're only using it for certain reasons and they don't really appreciate that. So if you can add multiple links in your navigation to send authority to deeper pages on your site, that'll add value to those pages by improving the rankings and engagement to those pages. If you have 5 different services but you don't link to them, you only link into like a general detailing services page, you're not giving yourself the full weight and authority of your website. So make sure you link to each of those services. Or maybe you only have one service page, and this is where you need to build additional pages for ceramic coatings. If you do paintless dent removal, add a paintless dent removal page. If you do window tinting, or if you do stain removal and interiors, whatever it is, you want to build out those pages and link to them specifically. And then when you link internally across your site through the different pages, or if you have a blog, maybe you're linking to different blogs or different sections of your site, you don't want to use text like click here or learn more. That's called anchor text. And those anchor text links should be very dialed in and relevant to what you're linking to. When you use click here and learn more, it's very vague. Like Google's like, okay, great. What does that mean? You're not giving any context to what that link is that you're sending people to. So if you have a page dedicated to ceramic coating wheels, maybe you highlight ceramic coating for wheels or leather coating, whatever it might be, and you link to that text, not click here and learn more. And that'll ultimately drive relevancy to those pages, and Google will understand the relationship between all the different sections of your website. Because it understands they're different. And if you use click here, learn more on every page, well, there's no context or uniqueness. So it's a little bit more foggy for the search engines to understand that. By cross-linking across different pages and sections of your site, you're also allowing crawlers and viewers to find other parts of your website in different ways. And maybe you have kind of hidden pages, but you link to them in that content across different pages by cross-linking. That's a good tactic too. Maybe you don't want your navigation to be crazy big. Maybe you don't want 20 links in your navigation. Maybe you only want 5. So cross-linking in the footer copy or footer sections of your website is a good way to send eyeballs in crawlers to different sections of your site. So I always recommend doing that. And one thing that I hear a lot, whether it's customers or internally at work with different employees that I work with, they do not seem to like when you link to external websites that's not on your own site, which is kind of an old thought process. Like, why do you want someone to leave your website? Well, you don't want them to leave your website, and most people don't leave your website. I guarantee if you dove into the data, most people don't click on those links anyway. If they do, you can have them open up in a new tab or a new window on your computer or phone. So Google looks at external linking as a source of truth or like a citation to prove out something that you're saying. So it's a vote of confidence for search engines to see you cross-link to other websites, kind of like Wikipedia. You link to Wikipedia to prove something that you're referencing, or maybe you link to another detailing products brand for some sort of substantiation about maybe how long their coating lasts, whatever it might be. It's okay to do that. Just have the link that you're linking to maybe open to a new page or window, and you kind of have those bases covered. So it's nothing to stress about or fight about. Just do it. Google likes it. Here's an example of my buddy Jamie the Cleaner. He's got a separate drop down for ceramic coatings that you can click on here. And then this one is more general detailing services. So you can do full detailing, polishing, and swirl remover, and paint chip repair. So he offers a few different services, but in other websites, you might just have one page that talks about everything that they do, while he identifies specifics here that you can click on, which is much better for SEO, much better for user engagement. It helps your potential customers even more because they understand the nuances to your business, not that you're just a general detailer or carpet cleaner or HVAC guy or a plumber. Like, you do multiple things. So it just gives a little bit more depth to what your business is. So always look to, link properly to different services that you offer. And that just lets people understand things. It lets Google, Bing, Yahoo understand things better. And it's simple to do. So just do it. And overall, like, SEO is all about the details and the little stuff. these things that I have here will probably take you 80% of the way there to where you need to be. The other 20% is probably a lot harder to do. It takes a lot more time to improve. And this is where the consistency, trying new things, and tending to your website really pays off. It's kind of like maintaining your ceramic coating or keeping up with yard work and maintaining your house. Like you need to do it. You can't just do it one time. Otherwise things, go out of control. And you want to make sure that you're keeping up with competitors, with what Google's doing and other businesses, maybe in your area. So you need to spend time on it, whether that's daily, weekly, monthly. You can't do it once a year. That's not going to cut it. By doing these basic things, it'll take you most of the way there. Then you just got to do the nitty gritty stuff moving forward. And then finally, track your site's performance and know your numbers. Without that, you're not going to have a compass to guide you. And there's many tools out there that you can use. Google Analytics is a great one. It's a free platform through Google that you can use to track maybe site traffic or revenue. You can use Google Search Console, which is another version of that can track organic keywords and things like that. And we'll dive into some of that stuff in a later video here to help you with understanding your data. But without that piece, you're really kind of shooting in the dark. So that'll be another episode that we dive into basic platforms, reporting tools, etc., that you can use to manage your business. But even if you just follow these best practices here, that should probably nudge you up the ladder a little bit more and improve your rankings as a whole and get you in a much tighter space that you need to be in. And as always, if you have questions, need anything else from me, you can reach out to me at fred@orangeblueweb.com. You can find me at Fred Shramovich on Instagram. And anything you might need, just hit me up and I'll answer any questions you might have. And again, thank you for your time. And until we see you again on the next one, stay diving into those details. Take care, everybody.